Good morning, Singapore and Malaysia. I'm HK. Welcome to day two, first session of SMVFF 2020. Today we'll be having John Layman, a superstar in his own right, writing Batman, Chill, and other fun comic books. So he'll be joining us live, and I'll have Tom to actually do a more detailed introduction. Hi, Tom. You're up.
Hello, everybody. Today we have Layman, who has written such great works like Chew, Out of Darkness, and Chew, Out of Darkness, the crossover. Definitely worth checking out if you've read either of the titles. He's also done such great works like Detective Comics and Batman Eternal back in New 52. But before all this, he was an editor for WildStorm, if you guys still remember that. And we have him live here today on our show. John?
Hi, John.
Thanks for having me.
Morning. Oh, sorry. Evening.
Evening for me. It's Friday night.
Time
Yeah,
zone.
it's-
Magical.
Yeah.
So how are you doing, John?
Yeah.
I'm
how are you
okay.
doing?
You know, probably like you guys, I'm on lockdown. I'm in Arizona and cases are exploding right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, I spend most of my time locked up.
Yeah, I hope that your family are safe.
Yeah. Wife and kid and I are stuck in the house.
Yeah, but plenty
Has
of
it been-
comics to read, I presume.
Yeah, I was gonna say, spend plenty of family time to introduce your kids and your wife into all the comics you've done. And
Yep. Oh, I've been reading a ton during this quarantine.
What have you been reading?
Let's see. I just wrapped up. I've been rereading a lot of kind of comfort food. I just wrapped up Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. I've reread Scalped, Why the Last Man, The Goon, Hellboy, Sandman. Did a full
All
run of
the good
Walking
stuff.
Dead.
All the good stuff.
All the
Yeah,
classics.
so I've been kind of like I hadn't read Walking Dead since it ended, and I was reading it in floppies. So it was kind of fun to start at the very beginning and read all 183 issues or whatever it was.
But how
must have been-
how was the experience rereading it? Does it change?
Yeah, it
Or
does
it-
because when they didn't announce the ending, so it took everyone by surprise. And when you read it knowing the ending is coming, it's an entirely different experience, and it feels more like it seems so obvious upon reread. Like, he's building to a climax and an ending, and it was a really satisfying experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine though, because I can imagine when the book first came out, everyone just said, "Wait, it ended?" Huh? What do you think it was planned the whole time, or do you think it was like genuinely redone?
Yeah, I
at the
think
point?
as a writer, I don't think you just wake up one day and decide I'm killing it. Like I think he kept it secret, and probably people at the company, his editor, knew. But I think he knew and was building towards it, even if he wasn't telling the general public.
Mm. I would assume that the same applies for you. When you were writing Chew in the whole 60-issue run, did you imagine there was going to be like, okay, this is 60 issues at about 30 or 40?
I said from the beginning it was going to be 60, and one of the reasons is all my favorite books are 60. If you look at Transmet and Why the Last Man and Preacher and Scalped, all of these books are 60 issues, and 60 issues seems like the kind of the perfect length of a novel without getting I guess too self-indulgent. Like it's enough to like really feel epic without going on too long. I think Bone might have been 60 issues ish too. Can't really recall, but yeah, 60 issues just sounded like a good length. And when Chew hit at the beginning, I'm like, if I could go any amount, what would I go? And I looked at all my favorite comics and said, okay, I'm going 60 issues.
Well, I look forward to Outer Darkness and the extension of Chew to be another 60 issues then.
No, there will not be any more Outer Darkness. I got that bad news a while ago from Skybound. So that's what happens when you don't own a book. Skybound owns it, not me. I don't have a choice. So you'll be seeing more Image book work from me because with Image, I mean, Skybound is its own arm. With Image proper, you own it and control it. So the new Chew book, CHU, Tom Chew, it will go as long as I want.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can't believe I just found out Outer Darkness was canceled on this call. What a way to start a Sunday morning.
I guess it's not really public knowledge. I haven't really said, But now that Chew Outer Darkness 3 is coming out and people are like, oh, when's season 2 of Outer Darkness? I got to break the bad news.
Oh, well.
Okay, before we actually proceed, right, I think for the benefit of viewers that's actually not familiar with your work, maybe we should actually do a quick introduction of especially Chew, because we actually talk about Chew quite a bit. Yeah, so I'm just putting up an image of what Chew's story is actually about. Maybe John, you can actually tell it from a writer perspective.
He's a detective who gets psychic impressions from what he eats. So he's got to go to crime scenes and, eat dead bodies to figure out who the killer is. And it's a very kind of weird, funny, dark comedy where this guy, he hates his power, but he's kind of he's a cannibal cop to solve crimes. And it did really well. It won a bunch of awards. It was a bestseller in multiple languages. And we ran 60 issues with a few specials. So we ran, I think, 64 issues total. And it ended in 2016, started in 2009. And then this year, we're doing a new book called CHU. And this detective, his name's Tony Chew. And he's got a great big family. And all of them have food powers. And the new book is called CHU. And it's about his sister you never met because she was in jail. And where Tony is the male food-based cop, she is the female food-based criminal. So it's takes place in the same world, but it's kind of the flip side.
Yeah, I think during your introduction, I think you sort of skipped one part that's actually quite interesting about Chew, which is all these names like Cyclops or any other made up.
Oh yeah, where did it come from? He gets psychic impressions from what he eats.
Yes, I think when I first read it, I thought that it's a real word. But as I actually go on, I think that, and I started listening to some of your interviews. Yeah, I realized that you're just making them up, but it sounds so real.
Wait, we don't get psychic impressions when we eat? Wait, what? But in all seriousness, what did you get about it? I remember when I first read the book, I was looking at the etymology. I was like, SIBO has to come from some Latin word or something.
Yeah. I mean, it means food in either Latin or Greek. And I was an English major, and one of my favorite classes was kind of origins of words. So every food power is made up, but it is it's a combination of either Latin or Greek, root words. I mean, every once in a while it's something beyond Latin or Greek, but usually it's Latin or Greek. And it's weird because I don't do a lot of research in my books because they're not very realistic. But the one bit of research I did, and the thing that took the longest, was coming up with the power names.
I can imagine you just sitting in a room like, what is the next word? What is next? What's the next power? What's the word?
You got to figure out the power, and then you got to figure out like a combination of words that sounds, cool or rolls off the tongue well or believable.
But this is an inspired work, I would say. Like, sorry, go ahead, Hancock.
Yeah, I'm just going back a little bit as well. So because that you started Chew with a ending in mind or an end issue in mind, right? So when you actually start writing the stories, do you like plan like every few arcs, every 5 issues will be a story arc?
I had a skeleton. I sort of knew, okay, here's the halfway point, here's how it ends, here's the first quarter. Like I would almost, it was almost like you start with a backbone and you start building skeletons, and eventually I figured out, the beginning of it and ending of every arc, and then you just you start putting the meat on the bones as you go. And it was it always helps to have an ending in mind, no matter what you're doing. Like either if it's 1 issue, 5 issues, or 60, it's a smart thing to work towards something. I always recommend to writers to have it can always change, but if you go in knowing sort of the direction you're going, I think it really helps.
Yeah, I believe so. Else that particular series or that particular story, you outlast its welcome and it just turns stale.
Right. Yeah, you'd
rather think that, it started so well, but then man.
Yeah, I had some advice early on when Chew was really going well. They're like, why don't you just run it to the ground? Make it last forever. And I'd rather go out on my terms, the way I want it, than people just desert it because they're bored and it's been going on for too long.
Yeah.
That's kind of the problem with superheroes because, if you're Marvel or DC, you're keeping these superheroes around to sell toys or movies or whatever, and nothing ultimately changes. That's the great thing about a creator-owned book. You can say, hey, it's going to end, and you can make legitimate changes. Characters can die for real, as opposed to, we're going to kill Wolverine, but he's going to be back in a couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm actually quite surprised that Wolverine only comes back after a couple of years.
Oh yeah.
But they did brought in the old man Logan to actually substitute his absence.
But it's all Wolverine's dead, or Jean Grey, or Superman. Like anybody who's a big two superhero is gonna come back.
Yeah, that's right.
You're right.
If you're doing a creator,
there are already some viewers online, and they are actually leaving messages. So I'll just pick up some of the messages and just see. Steven Lim just mentioned that. Oh, love Chew. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, all. Coming from Barry. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead. I'll just put up the comments as I.
I see them now. Any crazy stories from the WildStorm days?
Yeah, that's right. That's a question that.
Well, everyone knows who Jim Lee is, right?
Yes, of course. Of course, who doesn't?
He used to throw the wildest parties, and this was, I guess, a more politically incorrect era. You could get away with a lot of stuff. We'd knock off at at noon on Friday and all go drinking. There was one time where he had a Lawrence of Arabia party, and he rented a camel, and everyone got to ride the camel at Jim Lee's party. Now, how
is this like in the middle of New York or something? Just have a camel.
I was in San Diego, but even so, where do you even get a camel?
Got a few numbers, I guess.
Yeah.
Should I just address these things? The question?
We can actually just continue our flow of conversation.
Okay.
Things that I've actually seen fit, we can just put it in. And we will have a session to actually go through these questions that are coming from flow.
Okay.
So where were we just now? We are talking about Chew.
Yeah.
And then Chew. So on the same topic, I'll probably, because on the same topic of Chew, I'll probably just put this image up. I have a question. What's with this? What's with this on the TV?
Oh,
why?
That was all Rob Guillory. He put in little jokes, and that's not something I ever asked for, in a script. Usually I would say two guys asleep on a couch, and he would draw all the crazy stuff in the background. And
that I don't think is actually I think it's actually a screenshot from a movie, isn't it?
Oh, it's Mary
Poppins.
And Mary Poppins. And I mean, does it actually get you guys into trouble in terms of copyright?
Because I'm sure it's absolutely illegal, but is Disney really going to come after us for putting something on a TV?
Probably they are. Maybe notice it until we actually start asking it in public. Because this is one of the earlier issue. When I actually read it, I actually laughed out loud from just looking at the panel.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the funny things the great thing about Chew is there's so many inside jokes that if you don't catch it the first time, every time you read it, hopefully you notice something new.
Okay.
I mean, even the double page spreads with Poyo, to me, those are genius. It's ridiculous.
Poyo, people love Poyo, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is another one that I actually have a question. You're actually being credited as the letterer, right? So does that mean that all this is actually by you, the one on the poster? Do you remember?
I can't remember, but I mean that's issue 7, but 90% of the time, yes. But I can't remember that one specifically. I would say it probably is.
Yeah, because
we're talking about something I did 10 years ago, and it's one panel out of thousands of pages, but probably.
Do you still do your own? Your own lettering?
Yes, I am lettering. I think 3 books right now. I'm lettering Chew, Bermuda, and the Man Who Effed Up Time for Aftershock. Bermuda is for IDW. Typically, if I don't own it, I don't. If it's work for hire or for if I'm writing Batman, I'm not going to letter it. But if it's something I own and have a stake in, I enjoy lettering. And if you're a letterer, you're not getting paid much, and you're lettering as fast as possible to get to make as much money as possible. But if it's my own book, I can be sitting on a couch and, you know, I'll spend 45 minutes on a sound effect, whereas a normal letterer is just trying to do it as fast as possible. But, you know, I'm sitting on a couch. I've got nothing but time. I'm kind of my own editor. Oh, you know, scrunch doesn't sound good. I'll make it splat instead. You know, I can make up changes on the fly if I want. And, you know, normally, you know, a writer would have to go through an editor, and the editor would have to go to the letterer. There's a real, I can't draw, but there's a real freedom to lettering your own stuff. You get an element of control over the page you wouldn't normally get.
And when you actually letter, is it digitally or
do yeah. I mean, the real old school professional letterers do it by hand, but I think most people these days do it on Adobe Illustrator.
And using fonts, right? Fonts that are readily available.
Yeah, in fact, I buy my fonts from Comicraft, who are they're some of the best letterers in the business, and I just buy and use their fonts and credit them.
Yeah. Okay. And so we actually talk about Chiu and Chu, and let's talk a little bit on the Man Who F Up Time as well as Bermuda.
Oh, okay. Well, it's an Aftershock book. It's my second Aftershock book, and it's just a really crazy time travel adventure. Artist is Carl Mostart, who's a South American kid. And this is one of his first gigs, but he's getting DC work too. Really talented, really hard worker. And it's about a guy who meets himself in a bar. He's a lab worker at a you know, all kinds of experimental stuff, and there's a time machine there, and he's like meets his future self, who says, you know, hey buddy, you know, go buy this lottery ticket, you know, get flowers for your girlfriend, you know, go back a week and do all these little things, and you'll make your life better. So he goes back 1 week, comes back, dinosaurs walk the earth, samurai, caveman, and then there's a cyborg future police from the future who want to kill him for messing up time. So he doesn't understand, because all he did was, you know, go back and do a couple little tiny things, and now all of time's messed up. So it's kind of like a time travel mystery. You know, how did this happen?
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great.
And every time he tries to make things better, he makes it worse.
It sounds like a very interesting book, and the thing that very noticeable in terms of your later works after the I mean, starting from Chu, is really that the unpredictability in terms of the storyline. When you actually started an adventure, it never ends like how it actually got started.
I try to make things not predictable, and I'm in a position where, you know, I write what I want to read, which is, you know, I don't write a lot of serious, heavy stuff. You know, it tends to be, especially now, things are so kind of dark. You know, who needs misery in comics? There's enough in real life. So I try to write a lot of you know, fun escapist stuff that you can just, you know, have a good time reading.
I think one of the surprises is also one of the earlier character, like Lindsay Wu. You spend so much time actually building her up, and just
classic. But you know, part of that is world building. You think you're learning about this character, but you're really just learning about the world. And then when you pull the rug out from under the viewer, the character died, but they've got a better sense of what this world is.
But any plan to actually have some, maybe like a spin-off or a one-shot, just to actually retelling some of her stories? Or no?
No, you know, I mean, the closest thing I've got right now is Chu, and I don't want to oversaturate the world. You know, I just did Chu Outer Darkness, and you know, I think one Chu thing at a time. So I'm going to concentrate on this this sister. Her name is Saffron, and her power is, if she eats a meal with you, she can learn your secrets. So she can, you know, if you guys go out to dinner, she's gonna come away from it knowing your PIN number, and, you know, knowing your safe combination and stuff like that. So she eats with people, and she's kind of a master criminal.
Okay, sounds good. So the other brother is actually the good guy, and this is like an anti-hero, or maybe even a villain. And
this first mini is actually set early in the days of Chu, and it's them colliding. It's you know, it's Cop brother versus Crook's sister.
So
I guess
meaning
we'll see
that
more Tony in this series then.
Yeah, well, I mean, it spins out at you, so you want to have recognizable characters at least at first, and then hopefully people will get invested in the new characters.
Hopefully
or
more
he
players.
will be images that is actually at the background all this time until
Yeah.
they met. Yeah.
And you know, people love Poyo. I wouldn't put it past him coming back in some point. Not in the first arc, anyways.
Yeah.
Looking forward to
Okay.
it.
And you
That's
actually mentioned that it's a mini series, or
Well,
you also have an ending in mind.
the artist isn't as fast as the original Chew artist, so and the market is, well, the market's really bad right now because of this freaking epidemic we're in. So we thought we'd put the first issue out and a trade, see how it does, you know, collect our money, and then because I finance this, I own it, so I pay for it out of my own pocket, get the money for the first series, use it for the second series, you know, etc. So I just keep I keep the money from one mini to pay for the next.
Yeah. Okay. It's good.
That's interesting. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's interesting because one of the things that a lot of like image series seems to be going through is, you know, being adapted to a Netflix TV show or something, you know, like The Walking Dead into a proper 10-season show. Do you ever foresee Chew going through the same path? I can imagine.
Well, we have been optioned 4 times. Some of it's been public, some of it hasn't. But there is always someone behind the scenes trying to make Chew a TV show. It just hasn't happened yet. And it took Preacher 15 years. So
it's why the last man still isn't out. Yeah,
it's weird because, you know, you a book will come out and you'll hear an announcement and then nothing will happen. And there's a lot of BS to Hollywood, so it takes a long time for things to actually happen. Like
when the action happens,
Rob Guillory has his own book, Farmhand, that just got optioned. Will it be a TV show? I don't know, but you know, Hollywood's always sniffing around for the next thing, and usually it's a comic book.
I think Chew will be a good kid, but
I agree
because it's actually such. There's so much of craziness in it. I think the budget for it will be very different.
I think they might have to dial it back and concentrate on the family and the police stuff. You know, I don't know. I don't know how much Poyo or, you know, space aliens. You know, it might be a little more grounded and realistic for the public.
Yes, I guess so. But I did saw some of the fan video. There were 2 that you actually share on your line. I think that some of these actually looks pretty good. Like one of the better video actually shows the when the character actually add something and how the multiple screen.
That's actually really good. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it could be translated into TV really easy. There's been talk about cartoons. I just think it would reach a bit wider audience as a TV show. So I'm always hoping.
Hey, maybe one day, you know, when Preacher was first announced, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I would like that TV money, that's for sure.
Hey, if it means getting more Chew in the future, then I'm totally down for it.
But you know, I'm a comic book artist or comic book creator first and foremost. Like, I'm just happy I got a 60-issue book. You know, how many people can say that?
Yeah,
true.
And you know, any TV show will not be as accurate as I mean, they're going to have to make changes. So you know, if you want, you know, what is Chew? It's right here. You know, here's the original version. Here's, you know, the real thing is the comic book. Anything else is just a version of it.
Agreed. So, question from the board: how did working on Chew with the new artist feel after Guillory defined the tone of it so indelibly?
Well, it was weird, and it kind of helped because I had this guy Dan Boltwood, but I also had Afu Chan on Chew Outer Darkness, and before the original Chew ended, there was Chew, and then there was a Chew Revival. We did a special that was like a flip book where we drew a story with the Revival characters in Chew, and then they did a story. So a guy named Mike Norton, the Revival artist, he's the first guy to do a version of Chew. So I'd seen it once before, and it was off-putting, but it was also cool. I mean, he's a good artist. And so in rapid succession, I got to see Dan Boltwood and Afu Chan do their versions of Chew. And it's you know, it's weird because I I'm so used to Rob's, but their versions were cool too. So I don't know. It's just kind of cool to see everyone doing an interpretation of the character. You know, everyone stayed true to who the character is supposed to be, anyways. Like no one, you know, radically went differently. So I mean that helped. So it's been a cool experience.
Great.
So yeah, I've got a question then. So I mean, you've worked a lot in the indie scene. Do you foresee yourself continuing that line, or do you plan to go back into the big two with your own 60-issue story to tell, maybe?
No, you know, I don't. Most of my, you know, editors tend to hire the people they work with, and all the editors I worked with have kind of moved on to different. You know, editors never stay. So I know nobody at Marvel. Like there are no doors for me because I don't know any editors. You know, you got to call them up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy who wrote Chew, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, what have you done lately? And I'm still doing stuff for DC. Like I just finished a little Batman book this week.
Cool.
So I'm still I mean just like a short, like an 8-pager, but I'm still doing little DC stuff. But I don't have any connections with, you know, the big editors that are going to hand me Flash or Wonder Woman or whatever. And I don't know. Honestly, there's a satisfaction to doing your own stuff. You know, you don't get like the big notoriety, but you know, when you're working on Batman, you're getting a tiny slice of an enormous pie. You know, when you're working on your own thing, it's a tiny pie, but you're getting a giant slice. You're getting, you know, half or more, and you're playing God. You can do whatever you want. You're working on Batman. There's 8 other Batman titles, and you got to like coordinate with everyone, and you've got an editor or a publisher saying, hey, you have to write a story where this happens because in this crossover something else is happening. And you know, I can play ball, but there's more satisfaction to doing your own stuff.
Fair enough. Fair play. That's interesting that you mentioned that, because like as an editor, you must have all these like sort of pet peeves that you have working in the giant system. And you know, when you became a writer for Batman a few years ago, you must have had to play that game again, and was like, I remember that trick.
I feel like it made me very sympathetic to editors because I know that they're not asking for changes to be a jerk. You know, there's 8 Batman books, and there's something going on over here, and you have to you know, it all has to, they're constantly juggling all these books. So I tried to make it easy. Like some people get mad because, oh, you know, I've got this perfect story planned, and you're doing this crossover with Grant Morrison or Scott Snyder, and it screws me up. But I'd be like, you know, hey, you know, it's not their fault. You know, they're trying to do as best they could. So I feel like I was really easy to work with editors, just because being an editor, I was very sympathetic.
Fair play, fair play. But do you have any like sort of pet peeves that you see in comic books, especially as a writer, as an editor? You must see it like the way it works, the mechanism and blueprint, right?
Yeah, the comic books that bother me the most, because I'm an editor, one thing I was taught is every comic book is somebody's first. Now, this may be, I'm writing Chew 55, and it may be my 55th issue, but somebody is picking it up for the first time, and this applies to any media. That sometimes there's an arrogance where the writer just assumes the character knows, or the reader knows everything about the character, and they don't say the character's name, they don't say what the character does, and there's some like comic 101 where just for the sake of introducing to a new reader, say the character's name, you know, say. Get the relationship with I mean, get a minimal amount of exposition in there that sort of catches up new readers. And
I guess that it goes back to how you actually tell a story every time, right?
You think if you haven't read this, if someone hadn't read this before, they would be completely lost, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason we always have a very short summary on the first page.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing. Like I said, every comic, someone's first, and you know, it was different when we were young because there weren't trades automatically. So in the exposition, they always sort of like laid everything. They recapped within the pages, And I'm not saying do that, but I'm also saying don't presume the reader knows everything, and do a minimal amount of exposition so they know who the characters are and what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Batman comes crashing through a window, somebody's reading Batman for the first time. Have a bad guy go, "Oh no, it's Batman." Something as simple as that. Get the character's name in there. It's the most basic thing in the world.
It's amazing because even the most recognizable icon, you have to go, "Yep, that's him."
Yeah. Just for story purposes. I mean, it's my biggest pet peeve, I guess, is lack of clear storytelling, and again, it's lazy writers and arrogant writers who I think do that. And you have to remember your audience, and you have to you may know everything as the writer, but they don't, and your job is to tell a clear story that they can understand. Because if you're confused, you're not going to enjoy a comic book.
That's fair. And a question from the audience, from Kelvin Leo: what established character will be on the top of your list to write about?
Plastic Man. My dream character to write is Plastic Man, and I have been trying with DC since like 1997. Like I have been trying, and I will bug them until I die. But Plastic Man is my dream character. Now I've got a continual bucket list, and Godzilla was on there, and Judge Dredd, and Aliens, and who else? I've been able to scratch characters off my bucket list. Like I got to write a Constantine story this year, and that was cool. And I got to write Swamp Thing recently, and Deadman, and like these are all characters on the bucket list, but the very top is Plastic Man.
Cool.
So I'm just googling. When did you write Constantine? I think I missed that.
I did it another like an 8 or 10 pager for it was either for one of the Walmart Halloween specials or like a Ghost special or a DC Halloween special. Like I've been writing these little like 8-page backup stories, and I did a Huntress, a Constantine, and a Deadman just in the last year, and then I just finished a Batman Swamp Thing.
Secrets of Sinister House. That's the one.
Yes.
100-pager, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was cool. That's like one of those old books that one of these like 100-page things that you'd get when I was a kid, and to be part of that, and it had like a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, like that was really cool.
Well, it must be amazing working with like all these other like great comic writers and great comic artists. Was there any like writers and artists when you were growing up reading comics, or whenever you got into comics, that you kind of said, one day I want to be as good as that person?
No, I don't typically kind of compare myself, or I'm not like competitive that way. And I have like rubbed shoulders with the greats. And I remember the only time I've talked on the phone with Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Alex Ross, and drank beer with Jim Lee and John Cassaday and Frank Quietly. The one time I was starstruck, I was at a lunch with Dave Gibbons from Watchmen, and I don't know what happened, but I just got tongue-tied. Like I couldn't talk. I was just, oh, Mr. Gibbons. I could not believe I was having lunch with the Watchmen artist, and he was a regular, as nice a guy as possible. It's a small industry, and after enough years, you get to know everybody.
Yeah,
that's amazing. There's another question in the audience from Frankly. Which series do you feel has elevated medium since Watchmen and DK? Good, great question, actually. We always talk about the greats, Watchmen, even the TV show, the actual graphic novel, but afterwards, there has to be a lot of like great titles that come out. People always say, "Oh, modern comics are the worst," blah. But what would you say are great?
Well, I would say Bone as like sort of the greatest comic for all ages. It's funny because I know so many comic book pros who agree with me that the best comic, like basically my favorite comic and a lot of other pros' favorite comics, is Stray Bullets, the crime comic. And not a lot of people read it. It still comes out. It doesn't get any buzz. But Stray Bullets is a masterpiece, and each and every issue is a masterpiece.
Very good. Yeah.
I think Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez is the best thing in the last 10 years. Anything Darwin Cook did, his Parker books and New Frontier, everything by, I hate to make Ed Brubaker's head any bigger, and, we're pals, but, and he wins every freaking award under the sun. But, the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips stuff is just, it's consistent. Like it's up here and it never wavers. Every issue is an A+.
Yeah. And it's also, just to interject a little bit, we actually interviewed sons of Sean Phillips, Jacob Phillips, yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So we actually had a session with him. Yeah. So it's actually quite nice that we managed to actually talk to someone that's actually quite very close to, and someone that
I think
you
he's
actually
doing his own book now, but he started coloring over Sean's stuff, and he's just he's amazing. It runs in the family.
That's right. And yeah, sorry, go ahead. Anything else that run off your mind? Any other series that people should be checking out and doesn't get enough buzz?
I'm a little biased here because I edited half of it, and I feel like it's as good as Watchmen, but it doesn't get the credit. Is Planetary? I think Planetary.
Oh, come on, Planetary's brilliant.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful and genius. But when people talk about Watchmen and Dark Knight and all the great books, Planetary seems like it's off the list a little more than it should be. And I think Planetary, if you're teaching a class in comics, Planetary should be one of the first books you read.
I always just say Planetary will be the last book you read because you need to have the whole idea of the medium, because it touches on pulp, touches on horror, touches on the Bronze Age stuff. So it's
yeah, you really have to know your DC, your Marvel, all your tropes. But oh god, it's so good.
Sorry. So the next question on the floor is, why Plastic Man? Oh wait, sorry, we missed a question.
Sorry. Yeah, just take this question first. We can go to
why Plastic Man? I just like him. I've got a great story that I'm dying to tell. I like the fact that he was his you've got your Clark Kents and your Peter Parkers, like the secret identities, which are kind of do-gooders. But his secret identity, Eel O'Brien, is actually a criminal. And I love the fact that you could have this super imaginative, a hero who's cool in his own right, but his alter ego is a criminal, not a good guy. And I think that would be a real fun thing to play off each other. Is he the criminal? Is he a criminal trying to be a good guy, or is he actually a good guy furthering his criminal career? I think you could do a really great story with him. And yes, I have read the Kyle Baker thing was genius. I think a certain type of person has to love it. I don't think it appealed to the general market because it was so silly and weird. But Kyle Baker is just fantastic. Kyle Baker, everything he does is fantastic. And Gail does really solid stuff. And I was jealous that Gail got to write Plastic Man before me. But Gail can do no wrong. So if someone's going to get it, I'm not mad at Gail. I love Gail.
So I was actually pulling this out as well. Do you think that writing for comics is different from writing novels?
Oh yeah. See, I've tried writing prose and I hate it because all right, some guy's wearing a button-up shirt and it's got a plaid pattern and you gotta describe everything in prose, where you can just sort of like the picture is worth 1,000 words. You can just say what's important and get the dialogue, and honestly, maybe
fills in everything else.
Yeah, make the artist do all the work. I hate writing prose. I just hate descriptions where I would rather absorb it in the visual media than read a bunch of words describing, someone's shirt or their breakfast or whatever.
I think that that actually goes nicely to this new book that has a bunch of details in it that I don't think that you actually describe it in your writing.
So Bermuda is as close to a YA book as I've done. It's all ages. You can show it to your kids, although it's not a kid's book. And it's you guys have heard about the Bermuda Triangle, right?
Yes, of course.
So everyone who's gone through the Bermuda Triangle ends up on this island. So it's kind of like Commandy or Tarzan. It's about this jungle girl raised on this jungle island. But like I said, there's pirates who have gone through. There's army ships. There's vacation cruisers, and they've all wound up on this island filled with weird monsters. So it's this all ages fantasy adventure book set on an island in the Bermuda Triangle.
And the fun things, I guess, from the fun perspective for an artist will be that they get to draw all stuff. It's not limited. Yeah. Well, it's not limited by the timepiece or what, or the settings.
Ideally, you want to draw to your artist's strengths, and I got hooked up with Nick Bradshaw, who's just fantastic. But I also knew he liked drawing like foliage and dinosaurs and lots of plants and stuff. So I wrote it specifically, towards what he would do best at.
Cool. Tom, do you have any other questions, or should we continue to actually take questions from the floor? Okay, let's.
I've got a question though. Do you foresee yourself working in other mediums outside of comics, maybe film treatments or TV?
Well, funny you ask this. I'm taking advantage that there's been kind of a lull right now in comic writing because of the pandemic, and I used to. There was a time around 2005 to 2010 where I phased out of comics and did a lot of video game work. And I used video game money to finance Chew. And during this downtime, I've actually been talking to some video game companies. So I'll probably, going forward, do a little video game work in the immediate future. And
the other thing comics for us from you.
Chew has had a bunch of we've had 4 options at this point, and it's reverting to me soon. And I watched Rob Guillory get his Farmhand book picked up, and he wrote the pilot. And in all 4 of these times that Chew was optioned, someone else writes it, and it's never as good as what I can do. So if I can get Chew sold again, I'm going to write the pilot, because I don't think anyone could do a better job than me. So comics, video games, TV, I'm looking at all that stuff. But probably never prose. Never prose for the reasons I told you.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Another question from the floor. What about stuff from Mark Millar and Garth Ennis?
Preacher is one of my very favorite books. And then Mark, Mark, I edited him on Authority back in the day with Frank Quietly. So Mark and I have been, good friends for decades at this point. Mark's great because, I love all his books that have turned into movies, and Mark just knows how to entertain. Like Mark kind of does what I aspire to do, where he just does things that are dumb fun, except he gets them turned into, $1 million movies. I love both Mark and Garth, personally and professionally.
Good. Also from the floor, just something that I love Stray Bullets. The story is so different from other comics, and the characters are so many.
Yeah, to everyone on this call, they should read Stray Bullets.
It's very dark. It's like Pulp Fiction if Pulp Fiction went on forever. It's very these interconnected crime tales, and I recommend it to anyone who's got like a strong stomach for really messed up characters. It's a great book.
Yeah, David Lapham has a talent for that. I remember reading his Young Liars a couple of years ago, and I just thought it was fantastic. It should have lasted longer than that, but it was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. No, everything David's done has been really good, and it's funny because he started selling original art a few years ago, and I've been picking up. I can't resist. I've picked up a Stray Bullets cover and like 3 or 4 pages.
Okay. So you're a collector of original arts as well?
Yeah. I don't know if I can. Can I show you my gallery?
Why not?
You
Yeah,
can make
please.
all of us
please do.
jealous by all means.
I don't know how much you can see. These are some Chew pages.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But,
can see that.
I have a room that's an actual art gallery, and it's getting evening. Let's see if
Jesus.
Oh, look at that, man.
Oh my.
Wow.
so
That's some
let's
true
see.
inspiration for some of the artists in here. Yeah.
That's
Was it a
that's
itchy and scratchy?
that's
Is that
yeah,
from-
itchy and scratchy. There's my
Matt
straight bullet
Groening?
cover. Here's a planetary page.
Oh my god, you have a planetary
gosh.
page.
Let's see. Preacher page. Sam Keith.
Sam Keith, I think, like I always said in the community, Sam Keith doesn't get enough love.
Oh yeah.
More people should actually like him.
Cerebus. It's hard for me to hold the computer and.
Is that a Geoff Darrow?
I have several Jeff Darrows.
Gosh. Wow.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Oh
Jeez.
gosh. Oh, look at the audience response.
And I've got a
Just
couple
look
more.
at them responding on all your collections.
Here's Jeff Darrow.
My lord.
So you guys in the audience, if you're actually beating a Geoff Darrow, John could be there beating for the same art.
And Travis Charest.
Oh wow.
Oh, okay.
George Perez.
Perez page.
Let's see.
There's a
Brian
paper
Pitt,
cover.
There's a cat there.
Cerebus. Oh yeah, that's actually done by my son.
Very nice. And Cerebus is by Dave Sim.
Yep. Here's Frank Quietly.
And a Frank Quietly
God.
page.
This is like
Gene Ha. Kyle Baker. Dave Crossland.
someone said I want preacher page. Is there any preacher space in there?
Oh yeah, sure. It's with our space.
Oh, our face. Yeah, that's
our face.
30 something, if I'm not mistaken. Jeez.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's been fun putting this together.
I think the fun interlude of the interview just turned awesome. Even more awesome. And thank you for actually allowing you to actually have a glimpse of your gallery.
Oh well, at least you care. My wife doesn't give a damn. She made me. She's like, you put it all in that room that I don't have to see. It's actually the kitty litter box room.
Your cat must be inspired.
Yeah.
There is another comment by Yip Humweng. A lot of us met you at the Singapore Con last year, and you were one of the nicest guy ever. I remember you bought an action figure from Mighty Jax. What other action figures collectibles do you have?
I have them right here.
Now it's a toy run.
I've got some
SpongeBob.
Micronauts.
Micronaut.
I have my own little Chew section here.
Yeah, the plush
Oh my
toys.
god.
The plush Poyo.
Why are there so many turtles? What were they called again?
Dogs.
Chogs, that's the one.
They're all the ones that have been, made. Like, it's really amazing to have your own stuff. I've got let's see, Plants vs. Zombie toys.
Wow.
Cerebus stuff.
Cerebus, yeah.
A collection of Frederick Brown books. He's a writer from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, different Lego sets.
I think the floor just went wild because you're sharing a lot of the similar interests like your viewers, and that that really explains why that some of your works that you actually written are so fun right now, because you're just you just like.
And then of course there's all the comic books. Well, we're all nerds. That's the funny thing. That was the funny thing about going to Singapore, and I have traveled all over the world, And cons are essentially the same. You know, it doesn't matter what country you go to. You know, you got your cosplayers, you got your, you know, your toy collectors, your comic book collectors. Like, comics are really like the geek culture is international. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's right. So I mean, despite all our cultural differences, but there's some culture that we share together, which is comics and the pop culture.
Yeah, I really think pop culture has kind of made the world smaller, you know, because like I said, I go to these comic book conventions and, you know, maybe they eat differently or speak different languages, but like we're all pretty much the same. Like, I wish some of the more narrow-minded American states could see this. Yeah.
I think when you actually started showing all your collections, I think the floor just went wild. And they are actually putting it's the boy cave.
Yep. Well, I've been reading comics for a long time, and that George Perez page is a Teen Titans page. I think I picked it up when I was in high school. And
do you remember your first comic? Actually, was it Teen Titans?
Yeah. So I was born in a small farm town in Northern California, and you know, I'm old enough that I saw the original Star Wars in theaters, and we're talking pre-VCR. Like, nowadays, you know, my kid can just press a button and watch anything he wants at any time. But like, Star Wars came to the theater and then it was gone, and I couldn't see Star Wars again. And I wanted Star Wars so bad. And then I went to my corner. You guys have 7-Elevens, right?
Yes, we do.
Went to my 7-Eleven, and then there's Star Wars comics. It's like continuing adventures of, you know, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo for, you know, 35, 40 cents. And so I started buying these Star Wars comics just so I could get more Star Wars. And then, you know, I'd go to the store and I'd already got the new issue of Star Wars, you know, hey, what's this? You know, ROM Space Knight or Shogun Warriors. And then, oh, Avengers, you know, Firestorm, Teen Titans. And I sort of went from like Star Wars and licensed stuff to superhero stuff. And then I went to indie stuff. And I've always been much more of an indie guy than a superhero guy, which, I mean, it was cool to write Batman, but it was just as cool for me to write, you know, Godzilla or, you know, all other licensed. I mean, it's all licensed stuff to me because you don't own it. So, like, I just like to scratch all these geek itches, you know?
Yeah.
That must be pretty amazing. Yeah. Do you have any like words towards any future aspiring comic writers or artists out there?
Well, yeah, especially right now. Do not do it for money. Like, the only reason to be in comics is for the love of comics. Because if you get in there for like fame or fortune, you know, only one person out of 100 gets it, if that. You know, most people are heartbroken. So if your goal is to make a good comic, and you make a good comic, you've achieved it. You know, if your goal is to make money and you don't make money, and you're probably not gonna. You know, I've got a lot, like, I got really lucky with Chew, but there's so many books that are great books that don't make money. But if your goal is to put a comic book with your name on the shelf that you can be proud of, like, that should be, do it for the love. Do it for, you know, to be able to create. Great.
I guess that also goes back to one of your earlier conversation whereby you actually in talk with some of your video games studios, right? So what have you actually written for video games so far?
So the big thing was I got hired to write the Marvel MMO in 2007, and then Microsoft pulled the license and it became Champions Online. So I was the lead writer on Champions Online, but I wrote Metroid Hunters for the DS. I wrote Soldier of Fortune Payback for PS or for Xbox, whatever the previous Xbox was, not 360. Was it Xbox Zero or just Xbox?
I think it's Xbox
One, was it?
I did a Dangerous Hunts game. I did. I got called in for dialogue jobs, like I wrote like a World Series of Poker, like the smack talk. You know, when you're like, whatever, all you have to do is write like 1,000 lines of people like talking smack.
Ah,
But and so yeah, just the big ones were the Metroid game, and I did the Marvel trading card game for like the PSP, the little handheld thing. I mean, we're talking 15 years ago at this point, so I haven't written video games in a while because Chew was so successful. I didn't need to. But now with comics kind of slowing down, my old boss called me and it's like, video games. That might be good right now while comics kind of, recovers from the apocalypse.
yeah, that's true as well. I mean, video games is actually racking plenty of money because of this pandemic.
Right, because people everyone's staying home. Yeah. I mean,
they have.
And I think comics are doing well. And someone asked about digital on here, and I'm still old school. Like I like my big hardcovers and stuff, but I have to admit I buy floppies more and more digitally because if it's almost like I'm testing it out. Like, do I want to buy the real thing and have it on my shelf? So it's easy to press a button and get it on your Kindle or your iPad and then pull it up whenever. And also I'm so freaking old that my eyes are going, so I can boost the be able to read it easy. But there's been a ton of times where I buy it digitally because I'm not sure. Oh, do I really want more comic books like in a pile in my office? So I buy it digitally, and then I love it so much I go out and I buy the buy every trade because I loved it so much. Like Headlopper by Andrew McLean was one of the things I heard was good. So bought one digitally, and it was so good I had to buy every single trade to put it on my bookshelf.
Pretty good. On the topic of your game era time, right? Julius just actually asked, Oman, I love Champions Online. Which mission story you wrote for that? Do you still remember?
The whole game. I mean,
the whole game.
I know that they like updated. So I left right when the game shipped, but every mission that was there when the game shipped, I had a hand in. And I don't want to say I completely did it because it's a collaborative effort. I had a boss, I had teams working with me, but I was the dedicated writer on that, and it was a lot of fun. But I knew I wanted to be in comics, and they also kind of said the way video games work is you ship a game and then they lay off like half the people because they don't need them anymore. So I knew that when the game shipped, I was going to lose my job. And so I did this. I had this dumb bird flu cannibal book that nobody wanted called Chew. And so I was going to finance 5 issues. No one would care, but I'd show it to editors. And I'd be like, yeah, I've been in video games, but here's what I can do, editor, hire me. And so I wrote Chew, not thinking it would go anywhere. And then it blew up. And it blew up right when I left. I got laid off because the video game shipped. They laid everyone off. And then suddenly Chew blew up, so I didn't have to go back to games.
Okay. So I think in the similar topic, Visha is actually asking, I think we are actually curious as a pro in the comic biz. How do you see that the landscape changing post COVID-19 for the next couple of years?
Boy, that's a question for the ages. I think there's going to be a contraction. Like, I in America. Like my favorite store in Seattle just closed, and like there were reports of 5 stores closing, and all these companies said pencils down for a while because the printers were closed. And I think when it comes back, there's going to be a bit of a contraction, and I think that's a good thing because, frankly, I think there's too many comics. Marvel doesn't need to put out 30 comics a week, neither does DC. I think there could be less comics, and the market would probably be better if there were less but better comics. But that's going to put a lot of people out of work. Realistically, maybe I shouldn't be writing 5 books at a time. Maybe I should be writing 2. And maybe that's everybody. But how do you pay rent when suddenly you're, writing a lot more comics?
Yeah. I mean, there's also an observation that some of the creators went the crowdfunding route, right? So you give them a glimpse, you pitch them a project, and then you get all your fundings because they like your idea. They want to be part of the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, crowdfunding has done a lot really well. I hate the post office and I'm lazy and I don't want to like mail stuff. People are like, why did you crowdfund Chew? And it's like, because Image does everything. I'd rather them take some of the money and handle all the printing and all the distribution and all that crap, because I don't want to go to the post office and lick a bunch of envelopes and all that sort of stuff.
Well, you can always take the cut from the publisher and hire someone to lick the envelope for you.
I know.
Envelope liquor.
Someday.
Yeah.
Someday. I've been lucky because Chew did so well. I didn't have to resort to crowdfunding, but for the people who it works for really well. I mean, it's
some that actually they targeted so low and it actually reached like multiple hundred of percents or even thousands of percent of their target because so many people likes the idea.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Palmiotti, Brian Polito, there's a few guys who consistently put out great Kickstarters, and they make a ton of money and they put in the work. So good for them.
Okay. Oh, that's a question. Why isn't there a Chew and Conan the Barbarian crossover? I guess
the question on all our minds.
Well, so Chew and Revival happened because it was Tim Seeley and I are just drinking buddies, and so we over beer at a con we had the idea. And Chew Outer Darkness happened because I own Chew and I own a stake in Outer Darkness. So it's easy when you own the book, but when you have to go to a corporate, like, why isn't there a Chew Conan? Same reason there's not a Chew Batman, same reason there's not Chew Spider-Man or Chew Battlestar Galactica is you got to go through a company, you got to go through lawyers, you got to sign contracts. With Tim Seeley and I, we made a deal. We shook each other's hands, and we split the money. And with Outer Darkness, it was easy because when Skybound went for permission, they went for permissions from me, the owner. I can do whatever. But it's different when you got to deal with lawyers and publishers and all that sort of crap. So that's why I would love to do more crossovers, but I don't want to deal with lawyers.
Any dream crossovers with other Image properties?
Well, I don't know about dream. Like back when Sex Criminals was, I don't know if Sex Criminals has ended or just kind of slowed down.
I think it ended 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But I had a Sex Criminals idea. I wanted to do a Chew Sex Criminal, but I've also wanted to do like Chew Batman. Like I would love to do, have Tony Chew show up in Batman and do something. I just DC is, that's Time Warner. You want to talk about lawyers. That's the last thing I want to deal with.
It's true. I'm just taking a comments from the floor. Frank, just thanks John for all the great advice and stories. Can't wait to reach you. Actually, it looks like we actually passed an hour mark, but we still have time.
Sure.
So we will actually start getting some of these questions and see how it goes from there. Right?
Okay.
Someone suggested Warrior Chicken, Pollo, and Conan, Wolf Finest Assassins.
I could go for that. Yeah, I mean, we did do Warrior Chicken Pollo, who was like our take on Barbarian comics. And speaking of Barbarian comics, I'm doing Mars Attacks Red Sonja.
Oh yes. Good call on that. I almost forgot because we are having fun. So
it's funny because I did one of my first gigs as a freelancer in like 2002. I did Red Sonja Claw. So at the beginning of my career, I did a weird Red Sonja crossover. And I don't want to say this is the end of my career, but I'm not as young as I was in 2002. Here I get to return to Red Sonja for another weird crossover. And then the crazy thing is I got to write 15 issues of Mars Attacks for IDW. Now Mars Attacks is with Dynamite. So I'm returning to Mars Attacks, but for a different company, writing a weird crossover with Red Sonja once again. So that was something I pushed for because I love both Red Sonja and Mars Attacks. And we actually introduced Green Sonja.
Green Sonja. In the book?
The Martian version.
In the book.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, this is the first appearance, and it's actually on solicitation this month. So make sure that anyone that actually wants it, just get a copy.
Oh,
So
Where
there's
Chicken
a
Boy Went
glimpse.
Through would be great. Yeah, I mean, there's there's a lot of that. I've been the last fiction stuff. I've been reading the Expanse novels because the Expanse TV show is so good, I needed more. So I think I've been I'm on the fourth Expanse novel at this point, and I love it as much as the TV show.
Great.
I think we missed a question. Are there any writers and artists you would like to collaborate with?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I've been real lucky with the people I've ended up with and the people I've been like set up with. Like I don't think I've had. I think maybe I've had one bad experience in my entire career, which is not bad for, you know, I've been in comics since 1995, and no, I won't say who it is. I don't want to dream about like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to work with John Cassaday or, you know, Frank Quietly, but realistically, they're probably like the guys that I want to work with, I'm kind of tied up with. And at this point, I'm kind of happy when I get a cover from, you know, like I've had an Alex Ross cover, I've had a J. Scott Campbell, a Jim Lee, like, and just recently I got like the Bill Sienkiewicz Sinister House. So, you know, usually I like, you know, sometimes I get set up with people I've never heard of, and they turn out to be great. Like I did a Guardians of the Galaxy team up with the fun story where these international aliens are tasked to go after Gamora. So they come to Earth to kill the Green Woman, and they go after She-Hulk instead.
International aliens.
And I was set up with a guy named Otto Schmidt, who I'd never heard of.
Oh,
And,
great artist.
he's a god. He's magnificent. So it's always cool to be set up with someone, and then after the fact, you're just so happy. Like Jason Fabok on Batman, he's a superstar now. And who else? I mean, there's been a lot of times where I've been like just assigned to someone, and they end up great. So I don't dream about who I can be, you know, who's that person that I have to work with, because I've been pretty satisfied with pretty much all my working relationships. Like I've worked with some really great people without meaning to. So, you know, why focus on one person?
Yeah, true. And sometimes life has its own plan for you, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You get to actually meet friends along the way when you're actually working.
Yep.
And again, going back to meeting your art heroes or working, meeting someone that's actually your heroes in fiction, just because you know their work doesn't mean that you can actually work with them.
Sure. And like Joe Eisner and I have been buddies for years, and we always hang out at comic conventions. And there was a point where Dynamite called me, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to do Charlie's Angels, the '70s TV version with Joe Eisner?" I'm like, well, they asked me, did I want to do Charlie's Angels? I'm like, well, yeah, okay, that sounds fun. And they're like, it's with Joe Eisner. And it's like, oh shit, you know, he's my buddy. He's oh, sorry, I said that. You know,
no worries.
You know, he's my drinking buddy at cons. Like to work with a friend on a project that's fun, and like we're calling each other like, what if they do this? And like just like throwing silly, like it helps make the story more fun and crazier. So it's always good to work with a friend if you can.
Yeah.
It does sound like you love working on licensed properties, being Godzilla, Charlie's Angels, Mars Attacks. Like, is there, and are you looking forward to writing like, you know, more Alien in the future or more Red Sonja? Is there any like other properties you want to work with?
Well, I tend to like, okay, I've done Red Sonja now. I've done Mars Attacks. Like on my bucket list right now, at the very top is They Live. Like I have a plan for They Live if they would ever do a They Live comic, but no one has. I would like to write Star Wars just because everyone would like to write Star Wars. I would like to write Archie, you know, some Archie comics. And then, you know, like I said, I've got different superheroes, but I think the bucket list right now is you know, They Live, Archie, Star Wars, and then various superheroes starting with Plastic Man. You know, I had Swamp Thing on there, and I just got to write Swamp Thing, and it was only an 8-pager, but I still got to write Swamp Thing. So I'm happy whenever I can check somebody off the bucket list.
All right. So we are 9 minutes past our hour of allocations. Is there any other comments or questions? Let me see.
I think there's one last question from Vishal.
Just one last question from Vishal. Yeah, Tom?
So yeah, with an adaptation of Chew, what would be the benchmark of a good adaptation for your work? Is there any like adaptations of comics or TV or movies that you said, actually, you know what, that was faithful, that was good, I like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard because I mean, some things are way more accurate, like Deadly Class, the Rick Remender series that was on Sci-Fi. I mean, that was monstrously accurate, and it was really good. Only lasted a season. Like The Boys was great. Like The Boys was good because the Boys was a TV show I think I actually liked better than the comic, because the comic book was it was a little
very
too
juvenile.
rated R.
It's
It was
too
a little,
it's too in your face in terms of
and they
Agreed.
had to dial it back for the TV, and I think it felt like it found a better like balance, for consumption for the masses. And I don't know. I mean, like there are so many adaptations, and there's good and bad with all of them. I mean, every once in a while there's a terrible adaptation. Right now, me and my son are watching the Swamp Thing show, the DC Swamp Thing, and it's it's not completely accurate, and it's kind of going for like a teen audience that swears, but it's accurate enough. Like, oh, there's Abby Arcane, there's there's Matt Cable, and like Jason Woodrue, like characters I recognize from the book, and it's like, all right, this is good enough. I'm just happy to have Swamp Thing on TV.
Or they could go with the whole other direction and go do a Watchmen style. Everything is new, everything is different, but it's fantastic. Yeah,
just make it a sequel of it.
The show was so good.
It was so good.
Because they went their own direction, but they took the spirit of Watchmen.
The essence, I guess the essence of Watchmen and the spirit. Yeah.
I mean, the movie I thought was terrible, and the movie was as accurate as can be, but it didn't capture the spirit. Whereas
it was a scene by scene recreation, right? But the TV show,
it was missing the soul, and this one had the Watchmen soul, and then it just went its own direction. Like I really wanted to hate the Watchmen TV show, and I thought it was a masterpiece. That being said, I don't want any more. Let it stand as a self-contained thing, just like the comic did, or should have.
All right, I think we are having fun, and we are actually getting past overtime. I guess
taking too much of your time.
Taking too much of your time. Thank you for staying on.
I want to say that I got to go to Singapore in December before all this crap happened, and I am so grateful for that experience, because now I traveled a lot, and I don't know when I'm going to again, and Singapore was just magnificent. And now the idea that I won't get back, I don't know when, breaks my heart. But I'm so blessed to have been able to attend that show.
And aside from Singapore,
in the future,
you did also miss Malaysia, where both of us are from.
That was the thing. There were a ton of Malaysian fans. People brought me food. People brought me candy. Like the fans at that show were the best. So yeah, if I get a chance to get to your corner of the world again, I will.
I think one weird guy came over with a flag and requested you to actually draw on it.
Oh yeah, that's my little guy I draw. That's my masterpiece.
That's right. And the flag is actually right behind me.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Coming up. I think we have fun.
Hope
and
you
all
guys
these type of program. Yeah, thank you. And all the best to our future endeavor.
If you're ever in Southeast Asia, we'll see you around.
You got it. Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.